I can go ahead and start the poll. So one thing we wanted to find out was what version of Epicor are you currently using? So if you're signed in, go ahead and answer that, and that way we'll kind of be ready for when Kelvin gets back and starts his presentation. We'll get everybody the answers here. Kelvin, are you back online?
Maybe. What's it to you?
There you are. I went ahead and started the poll so that that could get going while you had to step out.
Ooh.
Looks like about 60% of the folks have voted. So if you would, go ahead and answer the poll. And how long did you want to give this, Kelvin?
In a couple minutes. We'll go ahead until we get enough answers back. Also known as I'm typing up the stump the tump question. Already got it. It's in there.
All right, I think we got about everybody. Okay. Haven't seen any more votes, so I'm going to go ahead and close this here. And apparently it's there. Can I share? Haha, there we go. So almost everybody, at least in our group, is at 10.2 or on a version of Kinetic. We do have a couple or one or two folks on 10.1 and nobody on 9 or 10.
Woohoo!
All right, it's over to you, Kelvin.
Okay, I'll go ahead and turn my webcam on. Is everybody still seeing my 23andMe DNA test, screen?
Yes.
Yep.
Awesome. Austin, I'll kind of go ahead and throw you under the quick part of the bus. Yeah, that's it. So Austin's over with Ford Tool. And they're celebrating their 50th anniversary here a couple years ago, so they're still riding high on that buzz, I'm sure. Hey, it was before COVID, and after COVID, those years don't count. So, hey, it's the only way I got rid of my birthdays a few times. So you're purchasing manager over there at Ford Tool, Austin?
Yeah, I'm the purchasing manager over there.
Awesome. But what do you guys do?
Well, Ford Tool is a job shop. We do pins, die cases, inserts, you name it, we probably will try to do it for you. We have 4 divisions: Latham pin, steel, tri-wire, and carbide. Latham pin primarily grinds pins, steel does turning and grinding, tri-wire does wiring, RAM, EDM, carbide, turning, grinding, polishing, primarily carbide, obviously.
So, and you guys are cloud users, correct?
Yes, yeah, we are.
Epicor Cloud. Okay. So you guys are running the latest and greatest version. I've got your contact info here if anybody is looking. I threw that up on the next slide. I'll also have this in the slide deck for everybody. I'm going to kind of come back to Austin, and we're going to talk about the pros and cons and what's good and, hey, what's all out there. But we'll kind of hit that afterwards. So I know I have this here, but we're going to hit this towards the end from a user perspective. So we're going to go back to slide 5. Kinetic 23 and me, mostly this is going to be UI and UX updates to the software. Field sequence, tabs, all of the screens kind of got a refresher, I think. As Epicor's been learning how to use Kinetic themselves, it was a case of, okay, let's fix this and make it a little more streamlined and easier for the user. So they kind of went back and went through all of the screens and kind of trying to fix things with technology they learned on this new framework.
Oh, it definitely has improved.
Tab order, sequences, I would say almost every screen was updated. Things did get some fixes. So like on material issue, quantity adjustments, there's a recent tab that got added or a panel card so that you can see what were the transactions you've recently done. this was kind of like we had in the Kinetic version. You could see, oh, what transactions did I already enter when I was doing material issue, or I did a quantity adjustment. So that got added into the 23. But really, everything got overhauled. I'm going to say everything because parts, customers, suppliers, every one of the entry screens that I can think of turned around and got some update somewhere or an improvement. If not, it was also a case of menus got updated, overflow menus, icons that were up by the overflow menu got updated. So everything pretty much on the whole Epicor family got a kind of facelift here when they went to 23. So right button enhancements from the overflow menu, new different items. There are now icons up at the top so that you can do a new, a save, refreshing and close. Some of the buttons, when you hover over, they will tell you what they are. Others you kind of gotta guess at. Not all of them have a mouse over that tells you what they do. Changing call logs in there, attaching documents, printing and posting, or process. Some say post, some say process. And the overflow menu items. A lot of these things got updated when it goes to 23 from 22. So I would say the DNA used to be a lot of Vantage and Vista heavy. Then I threw Profit 21, a few percentages for Kinetic and Epicor, but then also had to throw some Vegas luck in it, just because everybody was down in Vegas.
And they're planning on, they're planning on adding it to those other buttons, right? Like,
I'm sorry?
The brief description of what it does. They plan on adding those to the other descriptions that don't have it, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
And that was also one of the features that they added is you can now turn around and put those context menus out there and mouse overs. So ending activity and labor, this moved to the rebuild process menu. It's no longer under production. CPQ got an awful lot of enhancements, the KB Max going into Kinetic. There's now a where used tab under general ledger maintenance so that you can see where did I use this account, on what controls does it reference. So this is going to be some of the feature highlights that did get added to the software. Phantom Pack, this is going to extend into miscellaneous transfer orders and subcontracts so that I can do Phantom Packs there as well, not just on customer shipments. USB scales can be used in all of these shipment areas now. Before it used to be customer shipment only. Now you should be able to use USB scales for all of those. Non-conformances and scrap for co-parts got an enhancement as well in 23. So if you're using any of those, these will be some new features. And as I found out, DNA is not a good big show. Automated to automatically allocate. So I can now set up an automatic fulfillment that runs on a fixed schedule. I don't have to go in and click the fulfillment, go through the process, do my selection, and then hit allocate or reserve. I can now put this on the standard rule. I can consume WIP on an operation or leave it open for returns to inventory or stock. There were some enhancements made for Google document attachments, as well as external BAQ enhancements. Now, the external BAQ enhancements, yes, they increase the functionality to be able to handle more connections, but the drawback is you still have to use Classic to do it. I couldn't find the external BAQs in the Kinetic UI to be able to do it. We can also do IP restrictions now, which, yeah, it's a feature, I'm going to say, since it's IP proofing. I don't know how strong that's going to be for you. There was an awful lot of application studio updates, which I'm sure Hannah and Priyanka would also tell you. there's a whole lot of things that got added into here and improved. And this has been a heavy focus of Epicore's. The onset of 10.2.700 is getting Application Studio more and more usable for the people and adding more functions. So application widgets are in there. Guided setup for how do I add a grid? How do I bind the data? How do I get information into it? Same thing with data views. How do I add data views to my application like I used to be able to do a foreign key view inside Classic? How do I turn around that data views for Application Studio? And then also guided setup for panel cards. These wizards were added for the Application Studio because a lot of people were having trouble trying to get this going. Not everyone had Hannah's skill set for doing it or Priyanka's ability to build dashboards. Captions for columns. I can now do a mouse over on the column to say exactly what it is. So anybody that migrated their old version 8 or 9 info with character 01 and number 01 fields still referenced, you can at least now put captions in there as well to say what that data is. The other thing, I don't know if Priyanka went over this, but I can now delete applications and layers from Application Studio. I thought she had shown us that. This didn't exist prior to 23. I can also create and modify control events. And data rules were now added also in 23. Let me see, I'll go ahead and click here. Yeah, I'm still in Neanderthal. Dashboards with data rules. Priyanka had already shown us this by doing the highlighting. This is kind of the functionality that was in the dashboards back in Classic View. This is now available now in 23. You also have the ability now not to just regenerate one dashboard at a time, which was kind of a nuisance for people that were on 21 or 22. I can now do all the dashboards in mass. There is also a Kinetic software developer kit that got added to the software in 23. I believe that's going to be an extra purchase price, but I think there's a license or a software for purchasing that. Tim can probably confirm that here for us, or your CAM if you're wondering. There are a handful of new licenses that do come out with 23. Advanced unit to measure. Okay, Tim confirmed here SDK is at an extra charge here. AMM license for WIP and PCID. Application Studio has an SLS with integration at Epicore. It's a portal that I think you need to subscribe to for Application Studio. I'm going to throw that one also at Tim, since I think, are you still the head of the Application Studio team? I had that. Multi-site is required for AP invoice loads. Planning by revision has a license, and then the software developer kit. So just looking through the software, I found a whole lot of new things required additional licensing that didn't necessarily have to be there, but in order to use a new functionality, it's going to require a new license.
Hey, Kevin, Kelvin, couple things here. From Kevin, can you mass deploy all dashboards to Kinetic or just Classic dashboards?
This should be Kinetic, I believe.
Okay.
The Classic already had that ability.
From Andros, is the Kinetic SDK separate from the client SDK? Does it contain all the same business objects, etc., or do we need to buy both?
I would throw this back over to Tim.
And Tim, I've got you unmuted if you want to pipe in.
Sure. I believe that the standard, you have to check with your CAM, but I believe if you already have the SDK, then your license will transfer over to the new SDK. So this is the Kinetic SDK, which has It actually has additional features that the old SDK didn't have, but it's not an additional SDK. So,
Okay.
So it's an upgrade from the old, most likely.
yep.
And from Tim, hey, I'm going to talk for Tim. What the heck? App Studio should not require a new license, so it should still use the same license that the person already has. Is that correct, Tim?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
And Kevin, I'll go ahead and get that added a little bit later. I'm not going to go ahead and type that in the middle here. I found a few things were requiring licenses that were listed in the feature summaries. Other things that were new is tracking inventory by part and revision. So I want to know how many of I have in revision A and how many do I have in revision B. The ability to do e-signatures. If your FDA required tracing and compatibility, this is a big thing for your industry. That got added in 23. Sorry, let me go back a couple here. I did not find any schema changes in 23. There were 73 of them that I found in 22.2, but I did not find any for 23. And I don't know if that was just, it wasn't there. I didn't have a chance to run SQL compare between 22.2 and the 23 version, but I did not find any documents that said if there were schema changes to this. So the upgrade should be fairly smooth. Things that I did find missing between the classic interface and the Kinetic interface, data directives still do not exist in Kinetic. Epicor functions I can't find in the Kinetic interface. The updatable BAQ directives, BPM data forms, these exist on the old classic menu, but they're not on the Kinetic menus yet. Alert attachments, hold types, directive import, export, and update. Method directives existed, but the ability to export, import, and update didn't exist there. The external BAQs, while I can configure them on the Kinetic interface, I can't turn around and do them on the Kinetic interface. The user tracker was in the classic, but I couldn't find it anywhere in the Kinetic menu system.
I couldn't either. I don't think it's
Okay.
implemented yet.
I was gonna say, I'm like, I went hunting for it, but I'm like, I did a menu search and then I'm like, okay, did they call it something else? And couldn't find a replacement for it either.
Well, yeah, I don't, honestly, I don't use it too much, so I didn't look too hard, but I didn't see it.
Okay. Personalization purge, I couldn't find either in the system. So if you wanted to get rid of personalizations, this is a great way before you do an upgrade. You dump everybody's personalization so that you don't have trouble applying the upgrade or allowing the upgrade to run and validate everything. Couldn't find that in Kinetic. The implementation checklist is also missing. That was in the classic version. I don't know if they're deprecating the functionality because not a lot of people used it, but for those that did, it was a great way to control month-end procedures and make sure that everybody followed the same month-end. This may come play with Application Studio, I'm going to say, Tim, or the Automation Studio, because now I can do some of those things there that maybe I don't need to put the implementation checklist in it.
That may be true. Implementation checklist is one of those things that very few, if any, I mean, I used it like twice. So
There was a checklist.
yes, there was a place to put, well, it was a blank table with a bunch of things that you could put in, and you could reference the help files and you could do all sorts of things, but nobody really ever used it.
Oh.
I just had people that used it for month end or year end processing so that they knew that each step was followed. setting it up for an implementation was kind of rough because you only implement once.
True. That is true.
And Kevin from Kevin Barrow, time and expense entry has also been replaced by time entry and expense entry. So it sounds like they've broken into two different critters.
Yep.
Yes, it's two different programs now.
And then from Chad, got a question from Tim. When we run into issues with Automation Studio, such as requiring a field that's not required in the Epicor API, who should we go to for support? Epicor support or Workato?
Epicor support is frontline support for Automation Studio.
Thank you. And I think that gets us caught up.
And Chad, if you're not 100% sure, Tim's the head of that area, so.
Actually, I'm no longer
email it
Automation
to.
Studio. It's been moved to Tom Connolly. I'm now Kinetic Core.
Okay.
He's just trying to cover it up. He's still in there.
Help annotations I cannot find anywhere in Kinetic. And tips of the day. Tips of the day, I'm going to say not a lot of people use those either.
Yeah.
ECC customer and consumer sync, I couldn't find that in there either. Syncing for Epicor Commerce Connect. Customer shipping performance, the site performance, the dashboards that kind of showed you your metrics and your performance. I know a lot of people use those for KPIs, but they required a process to be run before the data would populate for it. But I don't see those in any of the Kinetic UI.
Some of the dashboards that were there in Kinetic were just never enabled. They're actually they're just not on the menu. That includes Kanban. The Kanban dashboards are missing in 23.1. They will show up in 23.2. So, but they're actually there. They just never got put on the menu.
Got it. So if we can find Waldo, we'll put all these things back into it. But it's just that, hey, go through the menu, take a look if they're in there. Is it okay to just turn these on?
Turn them on and test them. That's why they didn't get put on, because they didn't go through the testing cycle. So,
okay.
And there may be some fixes that were done in 23.2 as we turned it on and tested it. So.
Awesome. Now I'm going to bounce back over and kind of bring you in, Austin, for kind of going over the pros and cons. Let me go ahead and bounce back to side 5 here. I got these a little out of order. So from your perspective, Austin, can you kind of share what are you finding as a user?
Well, I started with the Classic and I learned the Kinetic as I went. So I kind of got a good idea of what the differences were between the two, because first I learned Classic and then I didn't get overly attached to it and learned Kinetic. So now I kind of know how to use both. But the pros are, they're very, very similar. Once you get used to the UI, it's very similar. There's hardly any differences. There are a few differences that you got to get used to, obviously, as it is a new UI for it. But there are some things that could use some work. Obviously, those would be the cons. Things like the quoting, there's some stuff that I feel like could flow a little better. Like there's a separate window for the engineering portion of quoting. That kind of drives me nuts because I also help with the quoting sometimes. Which, there's some, what do you call it? I don't know how to explain it, but there are some other problems that occur because of that other window coming back out of that window, for example. There's just a bunch of nuanced stuff that could be improved. It's not anything that'll stop me from doing what I need to do, but someone who sits there and works all day at that program, for example, would be absolutely driven nuts by that, So there's just some pros and cons there, obviously. What I wish is that, well, it was flawless, everything worked as intended. But that obviously can't happen. But there's hard to, maybe limiting some of the user interface options, you know, like, or being able to move the user interface stuff so that you have it personalized in a way that you like it. For example, maybe having certain fields not appear there, and being able to expand those fields, make them bigger or smaller. That would be great. I would love having something like that so that I could focus on, and then maybe like a separate window that would have the standard default that has everything, you know. There's your customized window, and then you have to click advanced or more options to see everything else within an entry field, or a, what do you call it? There's a terminology for it, but it's like purchase order entry.
The cards.
Yes, within the cards, there's separate windows. You have your customized window, and then your standard default window. That's something I think would be pretty cool, so that people could have it how they wanted. The pitfalls, well, I was going to say speed, but then I got into the Epicor with the, what do you call it, the browser. The speed is awesome there. When you're using Epicor within a browser, it's like half the speed. Everything is way faster. I know a lot of the problems with Epicor are the speed with, from what I've experienced. Everyone who's I've talked to has said speed is the biggest problem. Things just take too long. Every window you open, everything you click causes it to slow down, or, you know, take time, I guess I should say is a better way to word it. So speed is probably the biggest pitfall, I would say, out of those. Out of all the pitfalls I can think of, that's probably my biggest one.
Now, are you running the smart client or the web browser?
I've done both. I've used both, but right now I'm using client, because there are some things that don't work within the smart cloud that I can't. Like the other day I was using it and I couldn't print, so I had to go back to client. I think that's been fixed since then, but that was something that I needed to be able to use, you know. So I've been going in and out between the two, the client and the cloud base.
Because I've been hearing that the web browser version is actually faster than the smart client.
Okay,
But
can
then
you?
there's also a post online here from Kevin Barrow that says, hey, what's being done about the performance hit that it's slow versus the smart client? And I've been finding from users it's the reverse. The web browser Kinetic experience is faster than the smart client version.
Yeah, yeah. I find it faster on the browser than I do the client.
The fact is that when you are running in the smart client and you launch one of the new screens, then that new screen is launched inside of the smart client, but it's running in a browser inside the smart client. So it kind of slows down and you lose some of the functionality. But if you go straight to a web browser and put in the web address and run it from there, you get the full speed effect. And
yes, that is
different.
A lot faster when I used it.
Yes. I mean, it's night and day. I mean,
absolutely. That's something I thought was awesome. Like, that just how fast it was comparatively.
And the right clicking, opening up new tabs, you can do all sorts of stuff. You can have as many tabs as you want open. They link together. It's got all the full functionality that everybody wants to have. And it works better than if you're trying to do it from the smart client, which does it inside of a frame in a window in a Windows client. So
yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. I've only used it a little bit, but I will definitely be using it in the future for sure. No question about it.
And one other clarification, I mean, you listed off a bunch of apps that were not available yet, BPMs, updatable BAQs. Those tools-based apps, they're still in transition. They're some of the most difficult apps to move to a web browser. So that's why they were left, not left behind, but the left for last. And we're still working on them. In the fall, we'll have another release that does more work on those, but there's still more work to be done to make those as efficient as possible. BAQs are, if you're doing a simple BAQ, you can do most of the BAQ within the web browser version.
Kinetic. Yep.
But you can't do an updatable BAQ. So.
There were a few things in the BAQ where you had to click save, then close out the BAQ, go back into it, because when you hit test, it didn't always show you data. The screen would like freeze. But these are just nuisances that, they'll get fixed with time.
Yep.
Yeah, and like I said, I understand. That's what my wishes are, is that the new nuisances would be ironed out. Obviously everybody wishes that. But those will always be there. Some are more, how do you word it? Not detrimental, but I guess annoying to your workflow, if you will. And I'm sure that's why people are more prone to use something that has less issues or nuances, if you will.
Okay. The other thing, Tim, maybe you can answer, I don't even know if this has been suggested in ideas, is some type of loader, because every time you reboot or restart the server, everything comes up super slow until it's been loaded once. Is Epicor doing anything to build like a preloader where it loads IIS with the memory so that things load faster? Kind of like a website preload to make sure that things pop up quick.
I don't know. I mean, basically, the first time one person loads sales order entry, then that gets loaded. And you're right, it's that first time does slow things down. But the second person comes along and it doesn't take a long time. So I don't know if that's in the plans or not. Be a good Epicor idea. Somebody wants to go in there and put it in and vote on it.
Okay, I just know that, yeah, everybody, until you click once on the screens, it has to load into the cache of IIS. But if there was like a preloader that said, hey, your server restarted, we're going to preload everything, wait a minute, and then now we'll make it available for everyone.
I think that's a good idea. I mean, it would make a good first impression to people who are, loading it, for the first, or using it for the first time. It doesn't seem slow.
And we have
What? Sorry.
Go ahead.
We have a question from Mark Honey. Have drill downs been implemented in trackers?
Yes.
Oh, the scroll bar. Is that what was the question?
Have drill downs been implemented in trackers?
As in right-click drill down?
I think he's referring to the scroll bar.
He's referring to the right click he just typed in.
Oh.
And yes, right click is enabled in all the screens. So
yeah,
if you
the
right
context menu control,
you can open it.
Yep, the context menu control, you also have control over that again now, also in Kinetic.
Yeah.
In fact, when you're in when you right click on a part, you have two choices. You can open it. You can launch it in another window. There's multiple things you can do there. So you can also right click on a menu and open it in another tab too. So.
That I found just using the shift or the control key, also you get that web browser capability of opening in the new one, if you're in the web-based version. Kevin's got a question here about hotkeys being fairly limited in the Kinetic UI. Is there a plan for that going forward?
If we can figure out how to get Google to pass through all the hotkeys, that would be great. But remember, we're running in a web browser now, so web browser gets to take over all your hotkeys.
And Kyle Schneider has a question here. How do we get Epicor to make bigger enhancements to fixed assets and recurring entries? This is going to be by submitting them on the ideas portal, Kyle. Yep. I hate to say it, people can go ahead and vote on ideas and say, hey, our company has the same issue. I would recommend also posting that to the online EPI users and saying, hey, my company just submitted this ideas. If this is of importance to you, please join on. Because the more people that follow on with that, the higher it moves up the ladder to become an included item in the next version.
Kim, could you share the URL for the ideas portal and I'll get that in the notes?
It's actually on the menu now.
It's on the menu.
So
awesome.
When you're in Epicor, you can just go to the help button and right there is ideas and it'll take you straight to the portal.
But the actual portal ID is, I think it's epicor-manufacturing.ideas.aha.io. I'll post it in the chat here.
Awesome, thank you, sir.
And we are, just a comment about Epicor Ideas, we do daily participate in the ideas. We are daily going in and looking at ideas and looking at the high vote getters. We, in some cases, and I know of like 2 or 3 cases where we had an idea that somebody submitted an idea in January and that idea made it into the 2023.1 release. Now, it was a very simple idea. It was a simple fix. But it was like, ooh, look, we should get that in here, and we slip it in. So just because it has low votes doesn't mean that it doesn't get in. If it's a simple thing and we can shove it into the release, we'll do it. Most of the time, I'm not trying to set expectations here, most of the time the idea will sit and dwell and get lots of votes. And if it gets above 25 or 50 votes, it's starting to take a lot of attention. So
they're kind of like the old days when we used to fact blast everybody and say, hey, if this is important, ask support to add this. Same thing with ideas. If you can get more people to rally behind your idea and issue, it just moves higher up the ladder quicker. The best way to reach everybody is probably through the EPI users help board. Kyle, I would say the same thing. Flexing miscellaneous charges from sales order entry. This is a enhancement request I would put up to the ideas portal.
So I just searched for ideas in the system for fixed assets, and there's exactly 2 ideas and a total of 7 votes between the 2 ideas. So it's like not getting a whole lot of requests. So just a comment. And one of those is about Portuguese country specific for fixed assets. So.
Well, that applies to me directly, Tim.
If I all of a sudden see 100 votes for fixing Portuguese fixed assets, then.
Everybody go click on it now.
It will be very suspicious.
And Kevin Barrow has a suggestion here. We can have a Chromium browser for Kinetic and then a Chromium extension that would enable the hotkeys. You up for rewriting web browsers? Let's stick with ERP.
There is a really cool thing that I found in using Chrome is that Chrome supports, and so does Microsoft Edge, supports groups of tabs. And it also supports having a folder with your shortcuts in it. And so you can put your shortcut, all your shortcuts you normally launch into a folder as your favorite folder, and then you can literally launch that favorite folder, and it'll open all of the different pages you have saved as favorites into all at once. It creates a tab for all of them. And if you open it in a group, then you can actually collapse the group, and then that you just have that one group sitting there for your different functions. So.
Yep, and you can also set your Chrome to open where all your last tabs left off. So.
Yep. So I mean, you can tell it to open if you've created a folder and it says this folder has sales order, purchase order, part, customer. You can just open them all up at once, and they're all open.
Yeah, keyboard shortcuts are going to be hard to do there, Kevin, because it's the web browser doesn't allow for that. It's not the application necessarily. That's the framework that it's being deployed to. Exactly, Kevin. That's why you suggested, hey, make a whole new browser. Actually, Austin,
Yes.
other wishes that you have for Kinetic moving forward, since you're heavily using this, because this is what you guys are live on.
Any other wishes that I have? You know, there's almost, like I said before, there's just so much. It would help if it was a little more limited to an extent, if I could limit what I'm looking at, and make things a lot larger for my own what do you want to call it? My own use. That's really my biggest wish. I mean, I really don't have any other issues with it personally. I don't know how to explain it, but I really haven't had too many issues with it. Maybe that's just because I haven't used it long enough to have any better ideas, but everything seems to be just as good as classic, if not better, to an extent. I do like the implementation of purchase order tracker under activity when you're doing purchase order entry, I believe. If I remember correctly, that's pretty nice. I like that. Maybe implement trackers into entry a little more, like on a similar kind of deal where it's under the activity function.
Yeah, we have done that in almost, I believe, in all the apps. So sales order has the trackers, jobs have trackers. So everything has the tracker now available. So you don't have to go to the job tracker to go see more stuff. Just there's the activity tab on job entry. It's the same app.
I definitely like that's pretty nice. Maybe I mean, I don't know, maybe yeah, no, that's pretty much it. I mean, off the top of my head, I can't think of too much that I can actually ask for. There's only a few things that I have issues with, and I've mentioned them here, you know.
Yeah, one thing I noticed when I was looking, but when I went in, now I was a system manager, Tim. When I went into the system monitor, I saw everything. And then I logged in as a regular user that didn't have it, but they could still see everything in the system monitor too. Is that just a mistake in 23 or?
That might be a mistake. If you see that,
I'll go ahead and redo that, but I created a dummy user account without any credentials and not being a security manager, and I could go into the system monitor and see everybody's things that ran.
That's not intentional.
Okay, I've got an idea suggestion.
No, that would be a support call then.
Oh, okay.
That would be a bug.
Awesome.
Okay,
David,
it looks like there's a couple other.
Yep.
You got them. Never.
How was the conversion to custom DLLs to .NET 6 if using .NET Framework?
Are you asking me?
Yeah, Austin, I'm not going to throw this at you or Fred. I'm not sure what the impact was between .NET 6 and .NET Framework with DLLs that were custom written.
So for the most part, I've not had any issues because Cora lets you still use the framework DLLs. So you should be all right there. If you're trying to use, if you're still in the classic screens and you're doing a customization and you're trying to call like the business objects, there's a different way to call those in .core. There's a property that changed, so you just have to get the URI path from a different property on the business object, but then everything else should work the same. Does that answer your question, David, or are you looking for at something else in particular? I went ahead and unmuted you.
Now, David, I did post an answer to Monty on the EUG forum today. When they set up their server, they didn't put any of the older stuff on there. So he was getting a lot of BPM errors and issues with things firing because .NET 6 wasn't installed there. But Kevin kind of went over that with his setting up Kinetic today and making sure that as long as that's in there, you shouldn't have that problem.
I just thought of something. Currently, we're implementing the mobile warehouse right now, and we also wanted to try to implement some of the attribute aspect into part numbers. And we've noticed that if we do the mobile warehouse, the attributes do not work alongside the mobile warehouse. That's something one of my wishes is that worked, because then I can use them and not feel like it won't take too long for that to be able to be implemented into our mobile warehouse that we're currently working on. But that's just another one. I know both are fairly new, or rather the attributes are fairly new.
And then I think we've got one more from Mike. Is context help F1 available in Kinetic?
The
F1 help?
Or the application help? Because when you hit F1 in the classic, you turned around and got the application help. I'm going to go ahead and unmute you, Mike, because I'm not sure.
I already unmuted him.
Oh.
So Mike, if you want to kind of jump in and let us know if you're looking for the application help or field level help, what are you looking for there?
I'm showing him still muted though, Fred.
I'm sorry, Mike. One or the other. Now try it, Mike. You should be able to unmute yourself.
Okay, how about now?
There we go.
What?
Sorry about that.
What?
Yeah, so I was just poking around in Kinetic, almost, I'm very new to it. And, expecting to be able to hit F1 when I'm in, part entry and get part entry help and, drill down into other tabs and get context related help. Just wondering if that has been replaced with something else, or just what's the best way to get that, context help.
So when you're in Kinetic right now and you're on a screen, there should be that little question mark with a round circle around it in the bottom left-hand corner. That should be able to pull up the application help, the context, the field help for whatever screen that you're on.
But F1 also launches that. So I just confirmed that. When I press F1, it does pop that one open. So function keys are not totally inhibited, but that one does work.
Okay. Yeah, I'll explore that some more. I did see the field help and I did see the question mark and all that. It just didn't seem to quite follow the context I was I was in, but I will play around with that some more.
Okay, looks like there's a stump the chump and then one more, Calvin.
Got it. How many lines in Kinetic can sales order display?
A full screen's worth. In
I was
the
going to
list
say
view,
all of them.
yeah, in the list view, they will show. In 2022, our grids were fatter, and now they are skinnier. But it depends on how big your screen is and what your resolution is, because it's also will show as much as your screen will show. I don't know what the exact count is, though.
I would think it would
Yeah,
be
the count would.
based on the screen size.
Well,
Yeah.
your screen size, your font size, everything. It's going to depend on that.
It's a web browser, and you can change the resolution of the browser. So you can say, hey, show this at 150% or show it at 80%, and it'll make everything smaller and you can fit more on. It's not like the smart client where smart client was fixed. This is a browser, it's dynamic.
Okay. Any
And
other questions?
You can edit in the browser, in that browser grid as well. So
Any other questions for 23andMe?
Chris is saying he has 200 sales order lines, but it's only showing him 56 of them.
did you scroll down?
Yep.
It should show all of them if you scroll down. So
Is there a limit under company configuration for how many lines are shown
nope.
or retrieved?
The lines in the grid lines there should show all of them. It might make the box a certain size, but you should be able to scroll up and down through the list.
So maybe that's a call for support.
Yep.
So you might want to submit a support case for that, Chris. Perhaps there's an issue somewhere, but it should display all of them. Okay, any other questions? Well, we got everybody here. Otherwise, we're almost out of time for this session, but the next session at 2:30 is Stump the Chump. So that's our kind of our free-for-all question area. So if you have any questions for Stump the Chump, go ahead and put them into the questions. I've seen a few come in, and Kelvin's probably getting them added into the slides there. So we'll kind of deal with them in the order they came in. I'm sorry, Kelvin?
I would never do that thing.
Yeah. Thank you, Austin, for helping out, and thank you, Kelvin.
Yeah, sorry I couldn't be a better help, but tried my best. I was kind of sitting here, trying my best to help out.
Hey,
You're fine, man. All right, let's go ahead and take a break. We'll be back at 2:30 for the Stump the Chump session.